bungee jumping. Because if you work in, intensive care, crack a chest open, cardiac massage, very intense. They really get into the rush of adrenaline and things. And then on the weekend, it's like, what's there to do? That's an interesting phenomenon. Really, it really is. Adrenaline's a very powerful drug. And we forget that there really is an adrenaline, it's a very high drug, right? And one of the things that happens when people, when they see things that they shouldn't see, the heart begins to beat faster, right? For instance, people that, they've done studies with people that watch pornography and things like that. Stimulation, rapid heartbeat, adrenaline rushes, things like that initially, but then more stimulation. They need more stimulation, right? And the end result is a snuff film or something like that. Really, there's people that's what they need to be stimulated. These are very serious, from an Islamic worldview, very serious ways of attempting to assuage this emptiness, to feel alive. Now, for the Muslim, the goal in life is to reach a type of tranquility, not the stimulation. It is to reach a point where the stimulation is not needed for one to feel alive. That what one feels alive through a peace, an inner peace, which is achieved through worship, through prayer and these things. So the dunya is the worldly existence, and the dunya also has 7 stages. The first stage is the infantile stage. Now it's interesting, the word in Arabic for the child is ghulam. The first stage of dunya is ghulam, which means lusty. That's what it means, ghulma, to lust. And this is the infantile state. There's a lust, there's a desire. Ghulam goes to about 15 years of age, from birth to 15 years. And then young adulthood, which is where hopefully the child has been humanized in that first 15 years of life, to where they're safe to the society and they're safety to themselves. Then it moves to what's called the kahl, or the middle-aged person.
What's the second stage called? First is lusty, second is?
The second is, it would be like moving into what's called shabab, and it relates to fire. The second is shabab, and it comes from a root word which means fire. So this is where you have the fire of life. The first would be spring, the second would be like summer. There's a fire, it's heat, it's intensity, there's a lot of energy to do things. The third stage is reaching the kahal, which is related to maturity. It's related to productivity, where the person, now the fire has been used usefully, right? So there's something cooked there. There's been something cooked, and it's something worthwhile now. There's benefit to be had. And then you go into the fourth, which is the adulthood, which is a rajul or imra'a, which is full. And this begins at 40, right? This begins at about 35, small window here. So youth is from about 15 to 35. This is 1 to 15. 40 is a very important year in the Islamic view, because it's when the human being is at their full maturity. The intellect is fully mature. The body has reached its full maturity. The fifth one is where you reach at about 60, and you go into what's called the sheikh period, where the person is now like an elder, somebody who, they have wisdom, they have a type of presence within the society that is beneficial. And then, there's a stage here that's broken up, which would lead to 7, which is the sabi, which is the infant, first 5 years or first 7 years. But the last and final stage is called the ajuz, And it's interesting that the male and the female are the same. There's no differentiation. It's a male, the word for ajuz applies to the male and the female. And this is beyond, this is where they've entered like 75, 80 years of age. There's a transcendence of the gender at this point. There's a type of, you know, in fact, in the Islamic culture, traditionally, at about 60, the woman will begin to, there's open mixing in many, many cultures, traditionally, as the woman enters into that period of life. She's considered like, there's a wisdom that she should be present, that she should be in that environment. And then ajuz is that last phase. Now, death is the third stage. Now, the Quran says some people die early and others, Allah gives them, extends their life. If a person dies before puberty, they're not taken into account at all. And they're considered for paradise generally. That is the majority view. If they die after puberty, they're taken into account for their actions. So death is the next. Now, just to give you a scenario of what the Muslims believe happens at death. At the initial point of death, it is believed that the spirit leaves the body and hovers above the body. Now, if you look at the word for spirit, in Arabic it is ruh, which comes from a word rih. Now, spiritus in Latin also comes from a word that means wind. The idea is that the wind is not something you see, but you feel its effects. You see its effects. You see the leaves moving. So the ruh is not something we can see, but we feel the effects of the soul. The soul is powerful. When the soul departs from the body, and one of the things highly encouraged in Islam is to wash dead bodies, right? Because you prepare it for the prayer. It's very powerful, especially if you know the person, because you're in the presence, you see the absence of the soul. The body is there, but it is not, the soul is missing. That is not the same person that you knew in your life.
How does one account for the apparent same phenomenon with animals? They die during animals.
Because animals have soul as well, according to Islam. Yes, definitely. All things in the world are animated by spirit. Everything, including rocks. The Muslims believe that all the way down that there is a penetration of this divine substance that Allah has animated the world with. That's why everything is a sign of God. If not, you know, if there wasn't this spiritual element within creation, then it would not be a sign of God. It would be absence. It would be death and other. And Muslims believe that animals are raised up as well on the Day of Judgment. And Muslims believe that animals bear witness against people that abuse them. Right? Humane societies kind of have the hadith there, right? There's actually a hadith that the whole earth is raised up. And there's a hadith that people that oppress the earth will have 7 earths around their neck on the Day of Judgment. The Prophet said whoever pollutes a river is, you know, it's like they're cursed to do something like that, to spoil something. He cursed anyone that took hunting as a sport. In other words, they didn't eat the food, they just went out and hunted animals. And he said that there is a reward in showing kindness to anything that has spirit. So, at the point of death, the soul hovers over, and according to the Muslims, the soul says, "Ajiruni, ajiruni," hasten this process, because this disengagement is very difficult for the soul to be separate from the body. And then, when the person is placed, they're washed, they're wrapped in a funeral shroud of white cloth. Males wash males, women wash women, unless it's husband and wife. But generally, males wash males, women wash women. And then the body is put into the grave. The grave is dirt. Muslims are not buried in coffins. You're buried in dirt. And it's going back to the earth. Now there is a hadith, there's a story that Khazin tells in his tafsir, Allahu Alam, and concerning its validity, but it's told and it's an interesting story, that God sent the Israfil, which is Sarafael in the Bible, to go down and get earth, in which Adam would be made from. And the earth refused, which is kind of the nature of the earth, wanting to maintain the integrity, refused. And then so another angel went down, earth refused. And then the third angel, which is Azrael, the angel of death, went down and said, if you give this to me, I promise I'll return it to you. And so the earth was given. And the Prophet said that that the first soul, which contained all of creation, the first soul was created from all the earths of the world. From the white, the black, the red, the difficult, the easy, the fertile, the infertile, all of the earth's, the topsoil. And Adam, in Arabic, in Hebrew one of the means is from blood. But one of the words in Arabic is tawny and from the topsoil of the earth. So the idea is that the human being is from this topsoil. And so Azrael separates the soul from the body and returns the earth back. And you can look in terms of clay, man being created from clay, scientifically, secondarily, because everything that makes up our body is about 70% water, and the rest of it is coming from the earth through the animals and the vegetables that we eat, right? So we are literally made of earth, and we go back to earth.
Cremation unaccepted?
It's unaccepted in Islam, yes. Although there is an interesting hadith, which is a very sound hadith, of which a man, according to the Prophet Muhammad, a man cremated himself, and God still brought all of his parts together. And then he asked the man why he did it. And the man said that he was so afraid of the day of judgment. He was hoping that he wouldn't be resurrected. And so, according to the Prophet Muhammad, God forgave him for that?
There was no embalming, I gather, then?
No. Goes right back into the earth, and preferably the first day. At the point it enters into the grave, the next stage is the grave. It enters into what's called a barzakh, which is an inner space, and now it's no longer in a time-space continuum that we are in. And the soul is reunited with the body. It's not coming back to life. If you dig up the grave, this is going to be a dead person there. But the soul is reunited with the body, and consciousness is there. And then the grave is either a place in which a window is open to the garden or a window is open to the fire, depending on the individual. And then there is a questioning in the grave. There are two angels, Munkar and Nakir, that come to the grave and question the people. The first question is, who is your Lord? And the second question is, who is your prophet? And the third question is, what is your religion? The fifth is what's called the nafkha, which is that Israfil is the angel that is assigned to resurrection. The first nafkha, which is it means literally a blowing. The first blowing is all of the souls die. All of them. So there's an idea that life will stop. And the Quran says that just as the universe was expanded, it will be contracted at the end. In scientific terms, kind of like the big crunch, right? That it all comes back. And there is an idea of heat meltdown as well, because it says the oceans boil over, the mountains melt, everything is, there's a heat death. The Quran definitely gives an idea of a heat death at the end of time. And then the second nafkha is the resurrection. That there is a resurrection of the souls. And everybody is brought to a plane, which is similar to Arafah. And then the Qiyamah takes place, which is the day of standing.